When people think about Winnipeg, they don't always think about gangs. The city is known for its community spirit, its arts, and its resilience. But beneath the surface, Winnipeg has also faced deep challenges, and few names capture that reality more than the Manitoba Warriors. For decades, the Warriors have been one of the city's most notorious gangs. Their rise tells a story not just about crime, but about poverty, inequality, and the struggles that shaped whole neighborhoods. This is the story of the dark rise of the Manitoba Warriors. The Manitoba Warriors were founded in Winnipeg in the early 1990s. At the time, the city was already dealing with poverty, housing struggles, and racial divides. Indigenous youth in particular were often excluded from opportunities, facing discrimination in school, limited access to jobs, and cycles of poverty that stretched across generations. For many, the streets became the only place where they felt they had a community. Out of that environment, the Warriors were born. They weren't the first gang in Winnipeg, but they quickly became one of the most organized. The name Warriors was chosen deliberately, a symbol of strength, identity, and defiance. Early on, the group was made up mostly of Indigenous youth who felt pushed to the margins of society. The gang gave them a sense of belonging, protection, and power they didn't find anywhere else. But that sense of belonging came with a dark side. By the mid-1990s, the Manitoba Warriors had grown rapidly. They expanded their presence in Winnipeg's North End and West End neighborhoods and soon spread to prisons as well. Like many gangs, they became involved in drugs, weapons, and territory disputes. The North End, already struggling with poverty and limited resources, became the backdrop for turf wars between the Warriors and rival gangs like the Indian Posse and later, the Hells Angels. The violence shocked many Winnipeggers. Drive-by shootings, assaults, and murders connected to gang disputes made headlines. Innocent people were sometimes caught in the crossfire. For communities already facing challenges, the presence of gangs made daily life even harder. At the same time, the Warriors weren't just seen as criminals. For some Indigenous youth, they were a symbol of defiance against a system they felt had failed them. That dual identity, both feared and respected, helped fuel the Warriors' rise. A major part of the Manitoba Warriors' story is their influence inside Manitoba's prisons. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, the Warriors had become one of the dominant Indigenous gangs behind bars. Prison often reinforced gang culture instead of breaking it. For some members, entering jail wasn't the end of their gang life. It was the beginning. Recruitment inside correctional facilities gave the Warriors a steady stream of new members, and their reputation grew both inside and outside the walls. The cycle was difficult to break. Poverty and lack of opportunity led many young people into gangs. Once inside, prison connections made it almost impossible to leave. Generations of young Indigenous men became trapped in this cycle, and the Warriors were at the center of it. By the 2000s, the Manitoba Warriors had become so entrenched in Winnipeg that law enforcement launched a series of crackdowns. The most famous was Project Defense in 2011, a massive police operation that led to dozens of arrests and targeted the Warriors' leadership. Police accused the gang of controlling much of Winnipeg's drug trade and linked them to violent crimes across the city. These crackdowns disrupted the gang, but they didn't destroy it. Like many organized groups, the Warriors adapted. Some members went deeper underground while others carried on the fight in the open. For police and the justice system, the challenge wasn't just about arrests, it was about addressing the conditions that kept fueling the gang's growth. To really understand the dark rise of the Manitoba Warriors, you have to look beyond the headlines. Poverty, racism, and the legacy of colonialism all played roles. Many Warriors came from families that had been impacted by residential schools, foster care, and systemic discrimination. Opportunities for education and jobs were limited, and many felt disconnected from both Indigenous traditions and mainstream society. The gang offered a sense of identity and belonging that filled the void, even if it came at a heavy cost. This doesn't excuse the violence, but it helps explain why the gang grew so quickly and why it's been so hard to dismantle. Winnipeg's gang problem isn't just a crime problem, it's a social problem, and the Warriors are a symbol of what happens when those problems go unresolved. Today, the Manitoba Warriors are still a presence in Winnipeg. Police continue to target them, and communities continue to grapple with the effects of their activities. But the conversation has also started to shift. More people are recognizing that policing alone can't solve the problem. Programs aimed at giving youth alternatives to gangs, reconnecting them with culture, and providing real opportunities are slowly making a difference. The story of the Manitoba Warriors is a dark one, filled with crime, violence, and tragedy. But it's also a story about Winnipeg itself, about the struggles that shaped this city and the challenges it still faces. For some, the Warriors are a symbol of fear. For others, they're a reminder of the failures of society to take care of its most vulnerable. Either way, their rise cannot be ignored. So what do we make of the Manitoba Warriors? They're not just a gang. They're the product of history, inequality, and choices. Some made by individuals and some made by entire systems. Their rise in Winnipeg is disturbing, but it also forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about the city we live in. Because if we don't understand how they came to power, it's hard to imagine how Winnipeg can ever move beyond their shadow.